While Goku and Chi-Chi are out exploring the world, in the woods near Mount Paozu, someone else is on an adventure of their own. There was a young girl making her way through the woods in her car, while also occasionally checking a radar she had for something. Her ride is pretty uneventful, but she eventually arrives at a quaint house. Once parking and exiting her car, she would soon be greeted by the occupant of this house, an old man. He was coming out to see who was there, as he wasn't expecting any company. Of course, we know this to be Grandpa Gohan, and once seeing the girl there, he would invite her in for some lunch. After all, he had just caught a giant fish not long before she arrived, and he couldn't eat it all on his own. She would take up his offer, since she realizes it has been a while since she ate, so she follows him inside. He would ask her what her name is, and she'd introduce herself as Bulma, and he'd tell her that his name is Gohan. Throughout their meal, they would mostly make small talk, but once they are done eating, he finally asks what brought her out this far. This is when she explains that she is searching for things called Dragon Balls, and shows him the two she collected so far, the 2-star ball and the 5-star ball. She would also explain that there are 7 of them, and when they are all gathered together, a dragon can be summoned to grant any wish. When he sees them, he would realize that he has seen something like that before, as he explains that he found one in the woods during one of his walks forever ago. He excuses himself for a moment to go find it, since it wouldn't be on the shrine in this timeline, so he has to dig it out. He eventually returns holding the 4-star ball, and she would ask if she could have it. He would ask what she wanted to wish for if she gets all 7, and she would say that she initially wanted to wish for a lifetime supply of strawberries, but now she is thinking of wishing for a boyfriend. With him seeing that she doesn't mean any harm and has an innocent wish in mind, he doesn't have a problem giving her the Dragon Ball, so he lets her take it. As she prepares to leave, though, he would stop her from taking off right away. He would ask her about what she plans to do if she did run into any trouble on her journey. As far as he can tell, she doesn't know how to defend herself. She didn't really have a plan for this, and once he hears that, he would offer to tag along. This is when he tells her that he is well versed in martial arts, so he could teach her a thing or two about protecting herself. Though, he also has his own reasons for coming along, as he would explain that after his grandson went on his own adventure, he has been bored at home alone. So, this adventure might do him some good, since it would get him out of the house, and it would also help her out in the process. Bulma might be reluctant about the whole learning to fight part at first, so she doesn't see it as the most interesting or ladylike thing. Regardless, once their journey begins, Bulma doesn't need to use a bike in this timeline since her car wasn't wrecked by Goku, so she and Gohan both ride in it. Eventually, as usual, Bulma would pull over to use the bathroom, and this is when she's grabbed by the pterodactyl. Though Gohan would have an easier time defeating it than Goku did, as he wouldn't have to rely on using a vehicle to jump into the sky like Goku did. Instead, he would easily be able to defeat it with his Kamehameha. After she is saved, he might use this as his chance to give her a lecture about why learning to protect yourself is important. He would also explain that martial arts shouldn't be used to look tough and show off, and they should be used for self-defense. She would relent and agree to train with him, but since it was getting late, she would use the capsule to set up a house for the night. Some of the usual gags with Bulma wouldn't happen, since Gohan was nowhere near as young or naive as Goku normally was. Instead, it would just be an uneventful sleep, and once they wake up in the morning, Gohan would get ready to start teaching her the basics of martial arts. He would train her in a similar way as how he trained Goku, but so that it doesn't take up most of their time since they are on a journey, he would only train her in their downtime in the morning and evenings. As for how strong she might get, it could be hard to say, but I'm going to try my best to make an estimate. From a power scaling video I watched, it estimated Bulma's power level to be around 4 at the beginning of Dragon Ball. Then as for how strong she could get, we have to look at how strong Goku got from training with Gohan. If we take the power level from the original Dragon Ball Z Broly movie as canon, Goku had a power level of 2 when he was sent to the Earth. Then we were also told that Goku's power level was 10 at the start of Dragon Ball, so there's a 5 times multiplier from when he arrived on the Earth. If Bulma got the same multiplier as Goku, it would bring her power level from 4 to 20 over the course of their adventure. Anyway, when they finally start to make their way towards the Dragon Ball, both of them would run into the turtle. It's highly possible that Gohan might recognize this turtle since he had trained with Roshi before and could have seen him at Kame House. So, this might be where Bulma learns about Master Roshi and that he is a legendary martial arts teacher, as Gohan would explain that Roshi is the one who taught him. The turtle would ask them to take him to the sea, and they would agree. Since they still have the car, Gohan wouldn't have to carry him, as they can just load the turtle in the trunk. once they're on their way again, even with Turtle hidden, it's likely that the bear thief still stops them so he can steal from them. This might be the first time Bulma would get to practice her skills with martial arts that she learned from Gohan. I doubt her power level would be the full 20 I mentioned earlier yet, but she might be stronger than the bear thief already, so this would be the first realization she has that knowing martial arts can at least be helpful to her. I don't know if I'm going to make her a full-blown fighter in this timeline, but I'm leaning towards it. In the case where Goku isn't there to save her at every moment and his Grandpa Gohan there instead, I could see him starting to gently push her to training to protect herself. I also think this could be an interesting character arc for her, as it pushes her a bit out of her comfort zone. Also, while her heart may not completely lie with fighting at this time, it could be something she grows to like, especially if she experiences enough victories early on. That's not to say this route wouldn't have its challenges for her down the road, though. Regardless, after briefly celebrating her victory, they would continue on their way and would eventually reach the sea with the turtle. The turtle then asks him to wait there so he can bring them a reward. He'd still bring back Master Roshi, and he and Gohan would recognize each other right away, so they'd spend some time catching up. Bulma and Master Roshi would also introduce each other right away, but after that, Roshi would struggle coming up with a reward for them. After all, the immortal Phoenix is still dead and he already gave Goku the Flying Nimbus. Bulma would still spot the Dragon Ball that he was wearing as a necklace, and after explaining that they're collecting them, she would request that to be their reward. Roshi would settle for this, especially since he couldn't think of anything else, so Bulma never has to flash him her panties. Gohan and Roshi likely talk a bit more, and Roshi would fill him in on how Goku's training went and how he suggested for him and Chi-Chi to explore the world. They then say their goodbyes as they return to going on their journey. 3 days later, the two of them arrive at Aru Village, so that's where the Dragon Radar led them. As usual, they're attacked by Sherman Priest since he thought Gohan was Oolong coming to get Pokawatha. After they explain that Gohan isn't this Oolong person, they are told everything about Oolong. Also, Bulma still asks about the Dragon Balls, and after Grandma Palsy reveals that she has one, Bulma comes up with a plan to save the kidnapped girls in exchange for the Dragon Ball. The main difference here, however, is that since they don't have someone the size of a kid to disguise as Pokawatha, Bulma comes up with another idea. In the original series, we saw that Oolong was interested in Bulma at first, so she comes up with a plan to go with Oolong since she knows how to fight in this timeline. This way, he would lead her to the other girls, and then she'd defeat him, thus rescuing the girls in the process. So, once Oolong arrives, Bulma puts her plan into action and goes to confront him. Obviously, Bulma wouldn't do what Goku did of peeing out in the open and causing Oolong to get angry, so they get to follow through on their plan of Bulma following him to his lair. Once they arrive, Bulma would easily be able to beat up Oolong, especially when his time for being transformed runs out. He would likely be knocked out, and Bulma would lead the kidnapped girls back to Aru Village. In exchange for having rescued them, Grandma Palzu keeps her word and gives them the Dragon Ball. It's hard to say exactly what would happen with Oolong, but since he is knocked out, he likely doesn't go along with the heroes. After finding out that Oolong is weak and just a pig, the parents of the kidnapped girls likely restrain him until law enforcement can arrive to imprison him. So, Oolong would eventually be sent to prison for kidnapping those girls. Gohan and Bulma then set off towards the next Dragon Ball, which, it seems to be near Mount Fried Pan, but something to mention is that the name of the mountain might have changed. Since the fires were out and the Ox King started to rebuild his old kingdom, the mountain's name likely was changed back to Pleasant Mountain. This makes it easy for them, though, as Gohan would explain that he knows the Ox King, as they trained together under Master Roshi. Another thing to mention is that since they wouldn't have to chase the fleeing Oolong, Bulma likely doesn't lose her capsule case in the river, as her capsule case wasn't lost. When they reach Diablo Desert, they get to go through it by car. While their trip through the desert would be going faster, it's likely that Yamcha and Puar would still notice them, though when they approach the heroes and stop them, their interaction likely goes the same up until their fight. While Yamcha did hear about Gohan before, it's never stated that he knows what he looked like, so I'm going to assume that he didn't. This means he wouldn't recognize Gohan, but it wouldn't matter. Anyway, with how much training Bulma has gotten by now, I could see her being the one to try and take on Yamcha, too. But with his fear of girls, he would flee from her instead of fighting. So, with Bulma still having her vehicles, they're able to quickly make it out of the desert. This means that Yamcha wouldn't have the opportunity to track them down that night, which also means he never learns about the Dragon Balls. 3 days later, the heroes still arrive at Pleasant Mountain. As I mentioned earlier, the Ox King was still in the process of rebuilding his kingdom. When they meet up with him, he and Gohan will likely catch up for old time's sake. There's also a D where Gohan passes on the information that Goku and Chi-Chi are out exploring exploring the world like Roshi told them to. After they catch up with each other, they would explain why they're there, so he allows them to search for the Dragon Ball in the rubble of his old castle. Once they find it, the Ox King will likely let them rest there for the night. Regardless, after they leave, their journey still takes them through the Mushroom Forest. When they reach Fungus Town, as Bulma wouldn't have the bunny suit on, the townspeople wouldn't be suspicious of her. However, once they see the rabbit mob harassing people, and especially when they try to harass Bulma, she would take them on herself. They would still use their walkie-talkies to call Monster Carrot for help, and he still turns Bulma into a carrot. Normally it's Yamcha and Puar that get the carrot that is Bulma back for him while the mob was attacking Goku. This time, however, it'd be Gohan to get the carrot back while they're distracted. Monster Carrot is still forced to turn Bulma back to normal after he is defeated by Gohan. Once Bulma is returned to her usual self, Gohan couldn't take the rabbit mob to the moon and force them to make mochi like Goku did. Instead, they would likely be imprisoned by the town's police, and it also makes sure that Monster Carrot was restrained in a way that he couldn't turn people into carrots. When they go back on their journey through the Mushroom Forest, they are still ambushed by Mai and Chu, and her car is destroyed. Though with Gohan being as strong as he is, he'd be able to stop them from stealing their Dragon Balls. When the unconscious Mai and Chu eventually wake up, they would slink back to Pilaf's castle, but they would be berated for their failure. Anyway, since Bulma still has her capsules, they wouldn't have to rely on Yamcha just happening to show up with a vehicle she can use. Instead, she'd likely use the bike we saw that Goku normally used to go after the pterodactyl, since both could fit on it. With Pilaf still having one Dragon Ball, they would follow the radar and eventually reach Emperor Pilaf's castle. They still follow the arrows on the floor, which causes them to get trapped inside of the castle. Since they have the other 6 Dragon Balls on them, Pilaf would still demand to get them, but they'd refuse to hand them over. As usual, Pilaf would use the mechanical arm to bring Bulma to him so that he could do something nasty. However, before he tried blowing a kiss to get the Dragon Balls, something different might happen this time. With Bulma reaching a power level of 20 by this point from her training with Gohan, she would be able to break out of the mechanical arm. Pilaf, Mai, and Chu wouldn't stand a chance against her, so all 3 would easily be defeated and knocked out. After she obtains the last Dragon Ball from them, she takes this opportunity to explore the castle and find the button to release Gohan from the trap. Once getting outside, she would summon Shenron to make her wish. That when she wishes for the perfect boyfriend, Shenron would tell her that this is beyond his power. As we have seen in the Frieza saga, when they tried to wish Goku back to Earth, it didn't work as Goku refused to come back. No matter who you think the wish would count as the perfect boyfriend for her at this time, I doubt they would have a reason to be randomly teleported to an unknown location, so they wouldn't agree to this request. While this would disappoint Bulma, she might at least take solace in the fact that the perfect man for her is out there somewhere, so she would settle on making her wish for a lifetime supply of strawberries. While the specifics of that wish aren't important, I could see it going in one of 2 ways. For the first option, it could be that she gets a giant strawberry that replenishes itself when a bite is taken out of it. For the second option, a giant pile of strawberries would appear above her and land on her in a type of gag moment. So that she doesn't have to carry around the mountain of strawberries, she could just store them all in the castle. While the first option is more interesting in my opinion, I think the second option is more accurate, since I think Dragon Ball would include a gag moment like that. Now that their journey is over, Gohan and Bulma would discuss what they are going to do next. Besides going back home to West City, Bulma wouldn't really have any plans. Gohan could try to suggest for her to train with Roshi, and she might take up that offer. Sure, she initially only agreed to learn martial arts to protect herself, but with her having defeated the Bear Thief and Emperor Pilaf, she might have found some enjoyment in helping the world and others in those ways. After all, she has been shown to have a tendency to want to help others, even if she can be selfish at times. We have also seen her want to seek out adventure and excitement, so this might be the way that she gets to continue doing that. After all, she would have heard Gohan's conversation with Roshi earlier about how his grandson is out training and going on adventures around the world. If that doesn't appeal to her more adventurous side, I don't know what does. So, that appealed to her adventurous side, and that appealed to her side that wants to help protect people could lead to her taking him up on this offer. Though she would say that she has to go back to West City first to let her parents know what she was doing. Before she leaves, she would thank Gohan for everything he has done for her and would ask what he plans to do, which he would say he is likely just going to go back to his house as well. As this adventure has fulfilled his desire to get out of the house for a while, he does suggest her to come by and visit sometime so that she can meet his grandson whenever he comes back home. So, they then say their goodbyes. She makes her way towards West City and Gohan makes his way towards Mount Paozu.